You missed it last week.
Okay.
I was working, my brother.
That's why you missed it.
Yeah. I had a fire.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And then the roof fell on top of me.
It did.
An emotional fire?
No, like actually, like I'm.
An emotional roof?
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we never.
I'm
so scared. There's so much.
Yeah, I got a freak out. You don't think I had any calm was the guy that was
Friday?
Actually,
No, Friday
I was stuck with a heart condition. When I was coming up, I thought,
The same thing, I'm not still go down. And just in the kitchen.
I mean, I love it.
I mean, what if they, like, if someone's around the corner digging a hole, it's like, man, you know what I mean?
Okay, I'm ready to told you. So we were in the social hall. Renovation salon.
Okay.
Ladies had showers inside. The doors kept, they kind of set up the doors, chairs in front of the door. Okay, she was teaching.
I'll show him, and I'll pass those pictures on.
Saying,
I know, it was like, hey, we're her hand here. I know, it was.
Later on. She was afraid to be in there. So I think she might, I'll watch video off of you.
We're going for free. So, but I was just like,
Yeah. I've always wondered that, even like, what you see around.
like,
You can cuddle with your
no, but she's her child. That's actually what we do there.
Do so.
And so one day, I mean, I just get
So, you know what I mean, how deep.
because they were doing 3 hours. So that's what she's taught to just do that for the kids.
Hey, Bert, you wanna get downstairs? Yeah, sit in the back.
And so I was like, oh, I can't.
It's probably something that you got in the kitchen.
And then I tried to work on it.
That's what we're talking about.
I'm just getting you as an illustration.
It may not be built.
It don't get better with age.
I'm sure she'll be like,
And so then I was just like,
but that's how it used to be. I'm sure that's,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's.
I'm
it
sure.
was hard to have a friend that did that. Like, the weekend was so available, but not that many. So it was like, wait,
Yeah.
I honestly.
What's that?
The network.
The shirt's just.
I mean, yeah.
I figured out that the problem was somewhere around the restroom. Specifically, the dish
Like this one,
that
I
came.
was gonna tell you.
So I go, sure enough, it's mine. This is burnt.
Jinx.
I don't know why, but I kind of went back in there looking
Yeah,
for
but I
wires.
mean, but that's, we're not gonna, we're not
One
gonna.
of the cables that comes with the wall.
You want to eat?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad.
You know, you got the power supply, you have one goes to the switch and one goes to
Every
the
time I see my car or do a tour.
one going to the switch.
So we had to
do that.
It was still in the hole.
No,
It just wasn't slipped in.
Oh, I hated music.
but we were on
It was never fully clicked.
It's been working for months.
Really suspicious.
Yeah, I think so.
But I don't think
Sabotage.
that's-
I'm gonna put a lock on it.
No other.
I'm gonna put a lock on it, locking everything up.
okay, so.
Well, you are the master of locks.
That's right.
Because
In fact, that's part of my master locks for that.
The other Hicks brother.
That
I don't know if
is
you know this, Bert.
That is
Yeah.
fair. That's
And
the.
yeah,
You can
it
put
was
on that
still
lock,
20
the same
miles
digit
out of the way.
code for
Yeah.
the lock, so that all your locks be the same.
You know what I'm getting my brother for?
I have like 4 million. I used to go, that's awesome. I have these bike locks and it's just fun. And I would go and I would literally search through Walmart for all of them. Wait till he finds out they're all booby trapped here. 30. Same keys.
Yeah, the locks work good except when brushes are on it.
I heard that.
Then they just rip them off.
Oh,
So this is gonna be an ethics decision of if we have flash or not.
I can't remember.
Ethically should.
I'm like, I'm trying to say if he's testing us.
No, I mean, half of them left already.
That's true.
I'm still debating.
Trying to see if it's worth my time. It's one of the challenges.
Okay, now they're back.
Okay.
So that indicates it's time to start. All right, last week we introduced the idea of ethics, and we talked about how for us, there's not a whole lot of difference between ethics and morality, and we sort of came to the conclusion that our discussion about ethical decision-making is about how we apply biblical morality in our day-to-day decision-making, right? And one of the points that we made was that, yes, the Bible is the standard of right and wrong, but that's the place where we start, right? Because everything that we have to make decisions about is not necessarily just a matter of, is it a sin or not? Is it right or is it wrong? We want to be a little more nuanced than that, a little more intentional about the decisions we make. And so our word for last week was complexity. Right? Because again, I don't know about you, but a lot of the decisions that I have to make as I navigate people, and there's a lot of complexity to it. It's never as straightforward as right and wrong. In fact, as Christians, once we know the scripture says that this is sinful, it's not even really supposed to be in the realm of decision anymore, right? It's just, we don't do this. But we're talking about the things where we have to make decisions and make application. And so it's more complex than just right and wrong. Tonight, our word is challenges, because in the next two classes, we'll get into the area of ways that we go about making some of these decisions. But before we do that, I thought it would be good for us to talk about, well, what are the challenges to making good ethical decisions? What gets in the way of me making ethical decisions? And so I'm going to just open it up to you. I've got three categories that I'm going to break down, but I want to open it up to you first. What are the things that get in the way, just automatically, of people making ethical decisions?
It may hinder them,
It may hinder them.
like it's not to their benefit.
Okay, not to their personal benefit. Okay.
Are you like looking for like things like other people? Are you looking more like for ideas?
What challenges you when it comes to your decision being ethical? Definitely other people fall into that category.
Your past.
Your past. Okay. Okay. How so?
I don't know, maybe either good or bad, you've been in the situation and it skews your decision. One way or the other.
Okay. Okay.
You mean like, sorry, you mean like holding yourself accountable for past decisions? If you make the ethical decision now, that means that in the past you've made the wrong decision? Is that what you're talking about?
You asking me?
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, yeah. I mean, your past alcohol. I mean, whole limits of issues, I guess. Could be past like.
I guess to kind of add on what London says, like your definition of what's good and what's bad.
Okay.
You know,
So just the standard by which you make decisions in the first place. might not be ethical. Might not be ethical, especially from the standard that we're talking about in here. Okay. So let's put it into some categories, and maybe that helps us come up with something. So category number one, for no particular reason, is unhealthy motivations. Unhealthy motivations. Do you find that people's motives matter when it comes to making decisions? Do you find that your motives matter? And that maybe sometimes if you're not motivated by the right thing, that it gets in the way of you being able to make an ethical decision? Somebody read Proverbs 30, verse 8 and 9.
I think that's where I was going with, like, does it benefit me?
Yeah. Yeah.
He already had it written down.
Well, I mean, that's selfishness, right? What's my motive? Selfishness, greed, lust.
What was it, Proverbs what?
Proverbs 30,
What verse?
8 and 9.
Remove far from me falsehood and lying. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that is needful for me, lest I be full and deny you, and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and still, and profane the name of my God.
Okay. What's he talking about there? He's kind of talking about contentment, right? He's expressing I don't want to be, I don't want to be pulled away by riches, but I also don't want to fall into poverty where I might be tempted to steal, and so from either side, right, there could be the pull, and so it's kind of a prayer of contentment. Let me be content. But so one of the things that brings up, though, in that latter half is one unhealthy motivation, besides just things like selfishness and greed, could just be unmet needs, right? I mean, just from a lack of poverty, a lack of not having, and not just physically, although that's the illustration there, but I think tying back to you saying somebody's past and somebody's experience, just a history of unmet emotional, physical, psychological, developmental, right? Unmet needs can get in the way or can be a challenge to making ethical decisions. The specific example, right, is poverty would entice you to steal, feed yourself, feed your family, that kind of thing. But then you've got, again, words like selfishness, greed, things like that. Somebody read Proverbs 18:1.
Can I comment on that last thing?
Yeah.
First. So that really reminds me of Moses when we get to the rock where he strikes the rock instead of speaking to the rock over in Numbers. When he does that, that's exactly the same idea of what's going on in those last verses we were reading, where he gets to a point where, like the rich side of that, he says, lest I be full and say, who is the Lord? He's at a point where he has been leading these people on behalf of God, with God leading him for this long. And then he comes to this rock and God tells him one thing to do and he does something else. But he says, why do we have to bring you this water out of the rock? And he makes it about himself. And I think that's what's going on the rich side of that as well. The poor side, he's saying, need to steal food for my family or what have you. But on the rich side, he's saying, lest I become prideful in myself because of the riches I have. Just like Moses, he's been leading these people. He's prideful of his leadership position, and takes it upon himself. Get rid of God. It's all about him. Anyway.
No, that's-
18.
Well, before we go to 18:1, I forgot, there's another couple verses in Proverbs 30, verse 15 and 16 says, the leech has two daughters, give and give. 3 things are never satisfied, 4 never say enough, which is a real poetic verse. But like the leech, right? The bloodsucker has 2 daughters, give and give. It's like, that's all he does is just take. I don't think there's a better way of highlighting selfishness or greed or just consumption, which, again, not just unmet needs, but selfishness and greed and making it about me, right? All right, Proverbs 18:1.
Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment.
Read it one more time.
Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment.
I think that verse like specifically says exactly what we're talking about, right? So he does this, and so the result is there's a lack of sound judgment. There's a lack of good decision making because that's the path that he pursues, right? One more before we move on. And this is a New Testament one. James chapter 4. James 4. Somebody read verses 1 through 3.
What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war with you? You desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive, because you ask wrongly, to spend it on your passions.
So, unhealthy motivations. And what's the result of unhealthy motivations? It's the mistreatment of other people. It's quarreling and fighting because it's all about me and it's all about what I want, right? So, I mean, that's pretty simple and pretty straightforward and hits on almost everything that we brought up right away. Right? So how do we deal with that challenge? How do we set that challenge aside if our intention is to be more ethical in our decision making?
Think of others. Humble yourself.
Humble yourself. I mean, he does go on to talk about submission. Submit yourself, therefore, in verse 7, to God. It starts with humbling yourself before God, right? But yeah.
Maybe even like reframe for you and others. So it seems like it's that attitude of like, I just got to get by in the head despite everybody else. What if it's the case of like, by helping others to the two are not mutually exclusive? I think there is a factor of like, I do need to, but instead of seeing that as an obstacle or a nuisance, what if we're working in tandem?
Yeah. So, and that kind of goes back to the Proverbs verse that Matt read too, because it starts with isolate myself, right? As opposed to recognizing that, you know, in the long run, what's actually good for me is also what's good for my family, and what's good for me and is what's good for you, because we're all interconnected and this is a relational sort of thing, right? And so if I use you and abuse you to get what I want, then I actually hurt myself in the long run, because my survival is dependent upon my ability to work with and develop community together. All right, let's get a little more technical. Is that a word?
Processes?
Yeah. It
Sure.
just looks weird written like that. Faulty processes.
I'm not one to question you.
Faulty processes. All right. So most people. All right. So there was this thought that that more experienced executives or leaders would make decisions based off of sort of some of the technical decision tree processes, right? There's all kind of theories out there, processes for decision. But then what research found out was that actually it was less experienced people put under pressure that wanted a formal process to use to make a decision. And that the more experienced people trusted their gut more. Which makes sense to me because, we read a passage in Hebrews last week. It's like kind of getting at the idea of kind of by reason of use and practice, you become more equipped to do that. So the more experience you have making decisions, then the less you have to draw out some kind of formal process. But what that also means is that if you never take the time to stop, it's kind of just like with your beliefs. If you never stop and ask yourself, well, what exactly do I believe, and evaluate those beliefs, then you might believe some faulty things. If we never stop and go, okay, well, actually, how do I go about making decisions? and what is my process for making decisions? Then we can get in the habit of using a faulty process, right? And a faulty process then has us doing a series of bad decisions because we're repeating the process. So what do I mean by faulty processes? Well, what about faulty assumptions? Faulty assumptions. Did Job's friends make any faulty assumptions when they made some decisions about how they were going to try to relate to him and help him? What were those assumptions?
You must have sinned to cause these things to come upon you.
Yeah. And what did you do? Because you're suffering worse than anybody I've ever seen, so you really must have done something. Mac, are you still in Proverbs 18?
I am.
Can you look at verse 13?
Verse 13. If one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame.
If he gives an answer before he hears. So what's he answering? Or what is he using to give the answer? What's that coming from?
His assumption that he knows what they're going to say.
He's assuming this is the answer. Not only is he assuming this is the answer, he's assuming this is the problem, and this is the answer. Can you think of any times where it's easier for you to criticize somebody else? So I was going to say, can you think of any times where you made an assumption and made a bad decision and then found out some information and completely regretted that? But you can judge somebody else by it. Have you ever seen somebody make a poor decision because of assumptions they made and then they looked like an idiot when the information fully came out? Right?
The entire stock market. That's the whole thing.
That's the process by which it works.
Yeah.
It's always for me when someone asks somebody, how far along are you?
Oh,
What a gamble, dude.
oh.
I mean,
Or what do you do? What do you do?
man, and then you just
Can you
gotta
not do?
watch people squirm. You know what I mean? Because you're just assuming, I suppose this person looks to be with child, then you're like, oof. You just gotta sit in that,
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah, and so, and this includes, judgments, stereotypes and judgments about people for the color of their skin or various other things. Just make assumptions, but it's also, just making assumptions about how this works or that works or the world works or whatever that aren't necessarily true. If you're not pausing to evaluate what's true and not true, then there's no way you can make a decision that is going to work out properly because you're now outside of reality, right? It's not the reality that you're responding to. So faulty assumptions. Another one would be failure of moral imagination. Failure of moral imagination. All that means is a failure to think morally, right, about situations. So like, I don't remember which class it was in, right, but we just, I think, Alan, you highlighted in Judges, right, that everyone did what was right in his own eyes. So there was no moral imagination there. There was no stopping to even ask, what is moral? What is right and wrong? What is ethical decision? And so, look, some people are making faulty decisions because it's actually never really been taught them or encouraged in them to think morally in the first place. They're just navigating life. And especially in our Western society, a lot of people aren't engaging in these discussions that we're having. They're not engaging in philosophical discussions. They're just, what do I do to survive? And so there's a lack of any kind of thoughtfulness with regards to morals. They're not sensitive to the ethical dimensions of any situation. They're not giving any thought to somebody else's perspective. They're not trying to come up with novel solutions to problems. So it's just a lack of moral imagination. They just do what's right in their own eyes without giving thought to it being a decision process. Also, you could say moral disengagement, which can look like, trying to justify immoral behaviors.
Is that not a sociopath?
Well, I left number 4 out because number 4 is personality disorders. But only 1% to 2% of the general population actually have a diagnosable personality disorder. Although some estimates are as high as 7%, which would be 1 in 14. And so if that's the case, then you would be highly likely to have bumped into one of these people at some point in your work or in life. And they are diagnosably narcissistic, psychopathic, or Machiavellian. Or now they have added actually not a dark triad, but a dark tetrad. And the 4th one is sadistic. And in my mind, that's the worst one to come across. Because they're just intentionally enjoying creating pain. But again, we could have spent all class talking about those. But I'm hoping that nobody in this classroom has the challenge of overcoming their personality disorder to make ethical decisions.
I don't know, we got more than 14.
I know. But that's of the general population. We're not general population.
Probably me.
He who smelt it got it.
Fresh from the mouth, it's
But also in that category, not the personality disorder, but in the idea of like turning immoral conduct into moral conduct, you've got things like just diffusion of responsibility, right? Which even Adam and Eve did, shifting the responsibility, right? It's like, you made this bad decision. It clearly was not a moral decision. Yeah, but it wasn't actually my decision. Like, he made me do it. Well, she made me do it. Well, you made me do it because you gave. So we do that a lot. But also under that, faulty processes. Again, this we'll probably reflect more on that when we get into, okay, well, what's our actual process of making ethical decisions that we want to talk about? But another one is like just lack of ethical expertise. And sometimes we're quick to label people as bad people when what they actually need is some training about what's right and wrong and how to apply it, right? And so sometimes it's just faulty processes, right? And there's different reasons for why it could be faulty processes. But this is probably one we can talk about even more. The third one. Third challenge is contextual challenges or circumstantial challenges, right? So what might that look like?
stealing food when you don't have it.
Stealing food when you're poor, or I punched Bert in the nose, but he was talking about my mama. Like, that wasn't the most ethical decision, but he was provoking me. It was the context. I wouldn't normally do that, but I was put in a situation, in a circumstance where I got frustrated. And I failed to use my correct ethical decision-making processes, and right. But one of the things that you see in Scripture a lot about these contextual factors is the impact of the group that I'm in, or the culture that I'm in, and letting that influence my decision or my choice. So you recently also had talked about Jeroboam and Rehoboam, right? So 2 Chronicles 10 details how Rehoboam rejected experienced elders in favor of his peers, choosing to make things even more difficult for the people, and he split the kingdom because of it, right? Horrible decision if you are set as leader of this kingdom, right? And it was this faulty peer influence that let him make that decision. This is also why teens are idiots at making decisions, because their brains are wired at this point to reject adults in their lives and to feed off of one another. So this is what you have. You have Rehoboam circumstances. Groupthink, cultural temptations. You look at the generation in the wilderness, right? How many of them whine and complain versus how many of them put faith in God? Well, it was easy just to go along with the big crowd. Exodus 23 and verse 2 even says, do not follow a multitude to do evil. So God knew from the very beginning. In fact, before Moses even got down off the mountain, they had all bound together to make a bad decision, right? But then also in the contextual, what about moments of crisis, urgency, and conflict? does that make it a challenge to make good decisions? Like I'm put under the pressure of, this is a crisis and somebody's got to do something and somebody's got to do something now. I don't have time to stop and write out the pros and cons. I don't have time to consult somebody wiser than me. I've got to make a decision. Well, I probably need to have already thought through, right, the foundations at least of what's right and wrong and what are my decision-making processes. But definitely crises, urgency, conflict can be contextual challenges to making ethical decisions. So as we go into the next two kind of meaty lessons, we'll think back to those things, right? Because we're hoping to lay some framework for being able to make good decisions even when there's contextual challenges. We're trying to correct faulty processes we may have and put good ones in place. And we definitely are looking at, okay, well, how do we curtail our own unhealthy motivations that come along sometimes, right? But also it helps us to understand how other people can make poor decisions. Because we're real quick to go, look at what that idiot did. How could anybody do that? I would never do that. But when we understand the challenges that different people are under, then we can understand how somebody might have made that decision. And where it's helpful with that is we can help them then correct and learn how to make better decisions as opposed to just beating them over the head for how poorly they made a decision. We can figure out where the teaching needs to be, where the correcting needs to be. So next week's word then is going to be, oh man.
Suspense.
Character.
So
Character. So,
going back, a lot of
to the personality disorders?
no. I could be on that all day, but anyway. So some organizations, to help make better ethical decisions, will write documents that say, hey, this is what we do. But in all actuality, they're creating more problems because they're not learning how to develop proper skills to handle their situations.
Next week.
I mean, that's the same thing with like zero
Yeah.
tolerance, right? Things like those policies or those things that we're gonna handle this like this everywhere. It's written document. You're not challenged. You're not.
So what happens in organizations to address liability, we put all of this policy and procedure manual in place. That way, when you do something wrong, we can say, well, we're not at fault because the policy is this is what you're supposed to do. The problem is, how many of us can go through 200 pages of policy and procedure every time a decision has to be made and sort through what was it? Because you're not going to remember that.
Well, you're not
remember all
making good
that.
decisions either because you don't know how. You're not
Yes.
doing it.
Yes.
So you
Yes. And so there's this perspective on ethics that's called virtue ethics, which is actually, what if we hired virtuous people and we helped people develop into good moral people, and then those people would be more inclined to make good decisions. Doesn't negate having some processes in place, but
I mean,
people
there's
under
some-
pressure, you know.
they gotta make good decisions. If you're not developing that, and you're not gonna make good decisions.
Yep. All right. Thank you for your participation.
You're so welcome.
You didn't participate, right?
I really did.